I am old enough to remember when America used to hate football.
Football has always been ground up, not top down. That's how football grows. It grows through smaller clubs, through smaller teams, through communities, building up the teams to mean something to them. And if you look across the board in the US, that's happening in loads of places.
The Community Shield is less than a week away. Excitement levels are somewhere between 6 and 10. And it's not 6, 7, 8 or 9, baby. Football, sweet Premier League football is coming back into our loving arms. And to break down this moment of promise, pause and poise with his normal analytical settings at Brain in a Bottle of Terry's Chocolate are in settings, it is a joy to welcome back, still on vacation, aka Smith Family French Invasion 2025. It's my friend in life and pod, live from his camper van, I think, in the Loire Valley. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
How you do? Comment ça va is what I should be saying. How you doing,
Ça va bien, merci. Ça va bien, merci.
We've both got a French GCSE.
Yes, we do. Whether, hanging out with Thierry Henry, just like, simultaneously translating into English and the Francais. As you do. Bienvenue?
Not sure that is relevant. Although I should say, to be fair, the part of the Loire Valley that we are in appears to have been taken over by the Dutch. Very, very Dutch heavy. You say the Premier League's back, Rog. A lot of people excited about PSV Eindhoven in this part of France.
They're about to enter their Ricardo Pepi era, as they're all saying. When you say taken over by the Dutch, I'm imagining this can only be 80,000 orange-clad men and women just bouncing down the main street of Loire Town.
It's an interesting mix between orange shirts and slightly pink faces, because it's quite hot and quite sunny, and the Dutch are quite blonde.
God bless them. Can we just get a top line on how France is? Your holiday, the Smith family holiday, in that camper van, when the trucks are rocking, don't come a knocking. Is it like a scene out of Dunkirk? Or is it like the opening shots of Saving Private Ryan? Because those are the only two choices.
There's the only two British experiences of France. It's a bit of both, to be honest. The children have now gone fully feral, Rog. They are refusing to go to bed. We've lost control. They're just sort of roaming through the woods. Catching wild brie. It's the full-on French experience.
It is. Not to go all Tom Hanks movie on here. They're saying things like, we are the parents now.
To be honest, that's kind of the vibe generally. My son is quite an assertive character, and my daughter even more so. We've tried to give them a little bit of a free-range summer. And because we're on campsites, the Dutch, obviously famously liberal in many of their kind of social views, they have really taken that on board as a sign that all the rules have gone out of the window and they can just effectively do what they like. And the problem is, Rog, it's 30 degrees Celsius, which is something quite high in Fahrenheit, don't know, 90 maybe, 90-ish. And it's too hot for me to be bothered.
This is the whole new reality. That's like too hot for World Cups, too hot to parent. This is the world we live in now. By the way, if your kid is like currently gone feral on you and is uncontrollable, I'm not sure if you played the scenario ahead. Just wait till that first under-7s training when he's like, I'm not your son. I'm going to Jadon Sancho. This you or me is going to survive this, Coach Smith.
Can I tell you quite a self-indulgent parenting story?
Would you please? We'd like that. By the way, self-indulgent is redundant in this setting. Come on.
In this whole medium. Yeah. The first campsite we stayed at was also very Dutch. And one evening, Ed found a little gang of Dutch kids to run around with. No one spoke. They didn't speak English. He didn't speak Dutch. But they communicate as kids, as they do. It's lovely to see. And eventually a kind of football match broke out, like in No Man's Land in 1914.
Yeah, just like that. I'm sure your son said that. He tried to explain in his broken Dutch. He's like, yeah, this is just like the Boxing Day game that broke out between the trenches.
But it was adults, it was teenagers, it was little kids. Ed wasn't the youngest. It was all age groups. Terrible surface, weird plastic ball. And Ed spent the entire game like snapping at the heels of adults, like trying to properly kind of physically trying to intimidate adults. And I have genuinely never been prouder. Stood up to these technical Dutch fancy Dans with some good old English grit, kicking them, snapping at their ankles. It's what you want.
I'd love, honestly, if one of the times I had 4 children, if one of the times just looking down for the first time at my offspring, just popping out my wife was like a little Lee Carsley. I've never had that experience, but like proper English grit, God bless, I'm so bloody proud for you. And we've got to get to the hard-hitting questions of this summer of Rory Smith. Lots of comments under our last YouTube Raw, the very version of this pod last week. That great friend of the pod, at Goognick, one of them to notice, he wrote, Rory Smith has the world's fastest growing facial hair at Ben J.Y. Edwards, 7150, because there's a lot of Ben J.Y. Edwards. And I think out of all the 7,150, old Ben J.Y. Edwards is my favourite. They wrote, why is it that every time I see Rory, he's got different facial hair? What kind of super drugs are making his hair grow so quickly? Ro, care to comment?
Well, I always think of myself as having quite a light beard, Rog. The problem is it doesn't grow down the sides. Not really. It just grows patchy down the sides, like a Cuban rebel.
But everybody's got their facial Kenny Loggins danger zone where the hair just don't grow.
Around what I regard as my muzzle, then it grows quite fast. And ultimately, as I said to J-Dubs, our producer, who gets more personal information than he needs, I am currently 3 days without showering. Because it's camping and it's France. So I'm not looking my best. So this is just...
That's short for you. That's a small gap for you. In Yorkshire, it would be at least a week, right? You get sewn into your underwear at the beginning of winter and just wear it through. It's like the Middle Ages.
It keeps you warm, Rog. Yeah. It keeps you warm if you keep wearing it. Basically, it's defined by how much I can be bothered shaving, and that's not a lot.
Does that explain your Yorkshire Central American guerrilla chic that you go for?
That's the kind of vibe I'm aiming for. Kind of thinking like 1970s Argentine playmaker. That's what I want to look like.
Yeah, well, it comes more across as like Carl Walker chin tickler. I think that's what it's called in the trade, isn't it?
But it's not like sculpted. I don't have sculpted facial hair. It's just kind of... I mean, it verges on neckbeard if we're all trying to...
It self-sculpts. I don't like a neckbeard.
Yeah,
it
self-sculpts.
Part of me always has a fantasy of going like full-on Joe Ledley. Just let it be verdant.
I think that would be lovely, but it would also be quite itchy.
Yeah, I hate it. Hate the feel.
I couldn't be doing with that.
I hate the feel.
I would query whether Joe Ledley's performance analysts encouraged his beard.
I wonder, it's like ballast. Did it make him like perform differently? Did it anchor him? Did it give him more weight, more heft? Or did it actually throw him off balance? We will never, ever know. But this is turning into, I mean, a podcast that is normally just 70 minutes of a plea to the great big chocolate orange lobby to come and sponsor the podcast. We're turning into like a plaintive plea to Gillette to weigh in. So let us move on. I do want to shout out my team, my MIB team, before we begin. They recovered from really the night of nights last Friday night, a night that dreams are cut from, as we'll discuss a little bit, when we were live on stage in Manhattan with Everton Football Club, St. David Moyes there in person. Like, God, when I hugged him, raw, honestly, I felt like just a hug from St. David. I'm not saying I'm sick, but I do realise he could cure the sick, David Moyes.
Does he have kind of like a grandfatherly air to you now, do you think? Does it feel like the warm, nostalgic embrace of an old relative?
I did, but he's still, like, last time we were live on stage, I was overwhelmed. My overwhelming memory is just the sense memory of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's aftershave, which was just genuinely... It was moving. It was aftershave so powerful, it almost had its own operetta accompanying it when you... Oh my God, you heard. Honestly, it was what Prince sang about when he said, this is what it sounds like when doves cry. David Moyes smelled amazing. That was probably the greatest shock. But is he a grandfather? He's more kind of like the woodcutter that lovingly carves the sun out of wood in his wood chop, and then it comes alive, Illiman and Dye style. I'd say that's definitely the air. There's a fairy tale magic. Yeah, when you hug him, you feel there's a sense of breadcrumbs laying a magical path through forests.
Do you think that the act of, I'm going to say going white, but I mean not being ginger anymore, has helped his aura? I feel like that is the great change with Moyes, that he was always cut out to be an elder statesman of the game. That was his kind of personality right from the start. I imagine that David Moyes emerged from the womb as a kind of 35, 40-year-old man. Yeah,
like young Sherlock. Like, even when he was young, he was old, if you know what I mean. He did actually look at photos of himself when he was like 38. We popped one up of him taking over Everton, and he looked at it, and his reaction was very poignant, because one of my questions was, how young do you feel inside? All of us feel in age, you know what I mean? Don't like to be hyperbolic, but like 97. But he said, he just, when he saw that photo of himself, he did say, God, maybe I should dye it back ginger. Which would be, by the way, frankly, a terrible idea, David. Don't do it. Don't do it. But yeah, there is a sense of reclaiming the youth with the old bottle of ginge just for men, if such a thing exists. Do you think anyone willingly dyes their hair ginge?
Not that I can think of. But then, the world is a rich tapestry, Rog. And maybe there will be people out there who are willingly ginger.
There is something for everybody. God bless. I will say it was beautiful. I stood up straighter. I mean, mostly I just loved hundreds of Scousers who were over following that team, who came to our show and drank the venue out of every single drop and just made every second count. Our fans melding with like the Scousers on tour, it made it one of the greatest nights of my life. And we slammed right in from that to filming with Tom Brady, a conversation which is burning up our YouTube right this minute. We go deep on a football goat fascination with the other footballers. Truly, I mean, I learned a lot. In remarkable ways from a joke with a singular talent, trying to extend that into a whole new world, like Alexander, trying to realise there are more worlds left to conquer. Particularly loved the conversation about Ryan Reynolds and whether he and Rob Macker are the footballing Manning brothers for old Tom Brady. Do yourself a favour, give it a watch. We've got Arne Slot and Enzo Maresca coming up this week. These are just incredible times to be alive covering football over here. But let's start with a toast. I want to raise my third first Michelob Ultra of the day to USL2s, the fourth tier of American football. Vermont Green, who amidst quite delirious scenes on Saturday night became USL champions. Crowd scenes, everything that's shot there in that stadium. It feels, and I say this with love, just the lights, the colours, the amazing hue. It feels like it was shot in the 1970s in the best of way. The golden hue of those sold-out crowds. The brilliant Bernie Sanders. I don't know if you saw this, Rory, the Bernie Bow tifo before the game.
I did. I thought it was very, very good. And I liked particularly how they'd even got the little accent on the last E of Bernie Bow. Attention to detail in a tifo.
I know, it is. Etymologists, passion, energy, Max Kissel, clutch stoppage time winner. They really are Vermont Green. We've been up there. We had the joy of filming with them a couple of seasons ago to capture the essence of the story of what they're trying to build. They're a model to me of what an authentic club, the connection between team and town and fan base and greater mission, to be honest, what it can all look like when it comes together. Really, Vermont Green, you are an inspiration for all of us who care about the growth of the game in the United States. In all seriousness, lower leagues of American football this weekend, there was Hickory FC. They beat reigning champions, perennial US Open Cup burrito slinging threat El Farolito to capture their first ever MPSL national title. They come from Hickory, North Carolina with real passion. This is the town. I think the population's under like 48,000 people. They are surging. And I've written about the incredible Hearts of Pine in Portland, Maine. There is so much creative energy, so much fan passion, so much intelligent club building in our nation right now. I do believe watching all of this unspool, football's administrators here, they've got to build a long-term plan. There are embers of wonder across the United States. We have got to harness this energy. We've got to turn those embers into the true fire that can be fostered and really burn bright. Raw, I am old enough to remember when America used to hate football.
I think what's really interesting about teams like Vermont Green and Portland Hearts of Pine, who I've obviously become aware of as well, is that, you know, we spent a lot of the early part of the summer discussing the Club World Cup through the lens of kind of, what does this mean for kind of America's attitude to football? You know, are we all kind of exaggerating when we say that America has kind of taken soccer to its heart? But football has always been ground up, not top down. That's how football grows. It grows through smaller clubs, through smaller teams, through communities, building up the teams to mean something to them. And if you look across the board in the US, that's happening in loads of places, and it's happening in loads of places that Europeans haven't heard of, if I'm completely honest. I didn't know, Rog, that there was a Portland in Maine. That came as a surprise to me. But it's in those places that you see the game really kind of, not just setting down roots, but like deep roots, ones that will last for generations. That's what happened in Europe, and it's happening across the US, and that is the bit we should maybe be paying more attention to.
Yeah, wait till you hear there's a Birmingham in Alabama. Come to think of it, maybe Tom Brady thinks he's brought something in Birmingham, Alabama. This is mind-blowing. This is one day, Raw, we will go to Hearts of Pine together. They are the Bodo Glimt of American football, and I say that with great love. But let's get to it, to the football. News breaking late Friday night that Son Heung-min will be leaving Tottenham Hotspur after 10 remarkable years. I had a feeling this was coming when we had Thomas Frank on the show last week, and I asked him, what role do you see for Sonny this season? His answer, it felt kind of pieced together a little bit. I'd say lukewarm. It was pretty clear the club's captain was not exactly a core part of his plan. First of all, what a couple of months of profound emotion for Spurs fans. The Europa League win, yearned for, dreamt for, made real. The axe then drops, first on the manager that delivered it, Ange Postecoglou. And then Spurs fans have to deal with the emotional wrench for some. I've spoken to devastation of Sonny leaving, the emotional heartbeat of the team over 10 years at Tottenham. He said in his press conference Friday night, it was the most difficult decision I've made in my career. Such amazing memories. It was so hard to make this decision. I need a new environment to push myself. I need a little bit of change. 10 years is a long time. I came to North London as a kid, 23 years old. I leave this club as a grown man, a very proud man. What a journey, first of all, from Gangwon Province, South Korea to North London, defining himself as a buccaneering goal scorer, a handshake king, really the heart of the club's culture. He worked so hard, he toiled and then led his team to victory at the last 10 years, 454 games, 173 goals, 101 assists, and that one coveted trophy. Raw. We always say, in football, there's the rational and the emotional. This moment, there's so much of both. First of all, how have you experienced it?
I think Son is one of those rare things, and you can assess him both as a player and as a person. He's an imported player, a foreign player who became a kind of icon and stalwart and mainstay of the Premier League. Like it is weirdly hard to imagine the Premier League without Son Heung-min in it. And I think more than trophies, more than like goal scoring records, more than the captaincy of Tottenham, to the broader football culture, that's almost the highest honour you can afford. Is that like it will be weird to think that Son plays somewhere else, and that happens sometimes with English players, but it very rarely happens with imported players. Just they tend to be a little, they tend to come, they tend to go. That's kind of what happens. They're here for work, effectively. I think it's especially hard to imagine Spurs without him. And I think it's been particularly gratifying too to kind of watch his development as a player, because when he came, he wasn't the most fated signing. He wasn't a superstar, and he wasn't even necessarily somebody that we thought would become a superstar. But over the last 10 years, he's grown and grown and grown and been one of the best players in English football for a decade. And that is astonishing.
The consistency.
Yeah, just his versatility, I think, first and foremost. Do you know what? You never really saw him have a poor game. I know a lot of Spurs fans felt last season wasn't his best and that he looked a little bit jaded, a little bit kind of like the injuries maybe had caught up with him. But even so, he never played particularly badly. He maybe didn't affect games as much as he once did. But certainly in his peak years, and those peak years lasted for like 9 seasons, he was basically the complete modern forward. He could play in pretty much any position. He could play wide left by preference. He could play through the middle and was equally good. He could play as a number 10. I think he could probably have played wide on the right. I'm not sure how often he did. But he was always dangerous. He was great in a team that kept possession. He was great on the counter-attack. He worked brilliantly by himself. He was amazing in a partnership with Harry Kane. I saw someone say yesterday, I think, and I'm too much on holiday to remember who it was. I'm not attributing quotes. That Son was... We shouldn't forget kind of how responsible Son is for the player that Harry Kane became, and that is also definitely true. He kind of had everything and did everything. Son, I'm not sure that there would be any team in England at some point in the last 10 years that hasn't thought, I wish my club could sign Son Heung-min.
Yeah, I mean, I love Sonny, and I know I was far from alone in that. It was magical yesterday to see his emotional farewell in a Seoul friendly against Newcastle. He was substituted in the 65th minute. Both teams instinctively, apparently, not planned according to Eddie Howe. Both teams lined up as he walked off to give him a guard of honour off the field. There's a beautiful scene after the game. He was crying. A Spurs camera operator who was following him around with a cell phone started sobbing as she shot him. Sonny's been a regular on our show. We've been really blessed to have had him. I think he's made 5 appearances since 2020. I did learn something new every single time. We posted the appearance where he broke down that Burnley Puskas winning 2019 goal, with just hearing him talk through it, what was on his mind, really articulately. Was remarkable. Last time we filmed, we actually met in person in London. I went over, it was this time last year. We taped for over a decade, but always remotely. And I walked into the room and he was like so excited Well, first of all, he was so excited that we were there in person. And then he was like, it was quite embarrassing. He's like, you came over to meet me? I was like, you know, you're Son Heung-min. This is not an irregular thing. But he was so unbelievably chuffed to be able to speak to America with us there in person. It was really a mark of a man who took nothing for granted. I'll talk about that in just one moment. It was very moving, to be honest. In that interview, we talked about the idea of his legacy at Spurs. It made him sad to talk about then. We asked him what it would take to become considered a club legend, and he said something which I actually don't agree with, but that's because I'm an Evertonian. He said, I need to win a trophy to become a club legend. Anyway, he achieved that in his very last competitive game for Spurs, which is really the mark of the man. But my favourite rule, the favourite Son moment, hands down, was when we asked him to explain his camera celebration. And I want to play the answer in this show because I do believe, I was listening to it a lot this weekend, and I believe the answers are beautiful. Can you describe why you do what you do, but also the emotions you experience in that moment?
It's always something that I don't want to forget because, it could be my last goal ever, because I want to always scoring goals, but the scoring goals is always hard. I need somebody help for the goals because without the teammates, without the supporters, I think it's always difficult to scoring goals. So it's always something special feeling. That's why I want to capture this moment for my life. When I retire, I want to look back, look, this picture I have in my heart, in my mind, really happy. Just like positive, one of the things that I would never forget.
God, that answer, Rory, is both about football and life. Life is short, filled with surprises. Nothing is forever. I guess our only approach in the song construction is just to make memories of every single moment, to take nothing for granted.
Yeah, it speaks really well of him, doesn't it? It makes you realise that image of quite a humble and quite modest player that Son always cut. The player who brought his family across, who I think still lived with his parents in London, who always felt that he was just someone doing a job. He wasn't anything special. That is kind of deep down at his core true, which is really nice. It's not kind of a marketing ploy. It's not a deliberately chosen PR strategy. That he is aware that he is a kid from South Korea who grew up with an amazing talent, worked at it incredibly hard, continued to work at it, and wants to appreciate the things it's allowed him to do. And he's had so many of those moments. He scored so many wonderful goals. I like players who have like a characteristic goal, a goal that you look at and you think, even if it was just in like sketch form, that you quite often see on social media, you can kind of tell who it is. And I think Son is one of those players. He appreciated every single one of those moments. And that's really nice, because that's, I think, what you would do if you were a player, if you had the talent and the appetite, Rog, to be a footballer. You'd like to think that you'd try and remember all of the special moments you had.
Oh my God, your answer is just terrifying, though, that there could be a scenario in which Sonny in real life was like DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street off the field. You know what I mean? Like Krusty the clown when the cameras go off and he stops being a warm popular entertainer and just lights up a cigarette and becomes a miserable mad bastard. I can't handle that alter scenario. So let us deal now with something else that's hard to unpick for a lot of Spurs fans out now. We should dive into the rational rule and how we understand this decision, which was, they painted it in the way Manchester City and Kevin De Bruyne could not conjure together. They painted it as the player's decision. It probably was not the player's decision. So let's break it down. 33 years of age. Yes, diminished minutes last season. It was the first in which he failed to reach double figures for league goals since his first season in the Premier League. But it's hard to judge anybody in a 17th place league finish. Stats, still amazing. 0.38 assists per 90 minutes in the league last campaign. His best return yet. His chance creation, 0.68 big chances created per 90 minutes, which is, apparently I was blown away by this, the fifth highest in the league last season for players who played over 1,000 minutes. This is the key one for me. Spurs won 42% of the 24 league games he started last season, compared to the 7% without him. They didn't win 13 of the 14 games without the club captain. James Maddison said it best to me. Sonny is Tottenham. Tottenham is Sonny. It's weird to think about Tottenham without Son Heung-min. First of all, Rory, this is the end of an era when you look at the modern, heroes of Tottenham. In a weekend in which Dele is looking like he's going to retire from the game, or the game's retired from him. Harry Kane gone. Now Sonny. End of an era. goodbye to Tottenham's XG king. How much will Spurs miss him on the field?
I mean, Eric Dyer's still going strong at Monaco, so that's something, Rog. You know, that's nice to know. I think on the field, they were already missing him, if that makes sense. I take your point on the stats, on the fact that he was still delivering, but he was delivering less than he had.
Yeah, but let's ignore the stats for a minute, Rory.
You can prove anything with facts, Rog. He was still delivering, but there's two things that a club has to do. They have to look at the reality of what the player has just done in the season just gone, and I think Spurs would look at Son and think, okay, we can see that we have maybe crested the wave at this point, that we're on the downslope. And the second thing that the club has to do is think, right, where do we go from here? What comes next? And I think looking at injuries, looking at kind of the type of player he was at his peak, and to be honest, looking at the amount of money he earned, I think Spurs probably thought, okay, maybe this is the point at which this summer kind of makes sense to say goodbye. And I think the second thing a club has to do is look at where that decline is going and like the rate of it, how fast it's likely to snowball, because once players start dropping, they tend not to recover. There's an economic factor to that as well, of course. Like if they're high earners, you have to think about it more keenly, more quickly. And I think Spurs have thought maybe this summer makes sense to part ways. You know, new manager, Mohamed Kudus already come in. There will be more signings. They tried to sign Morgan Gibbs-White. Maybe that's the point at which you say, okay, the 33-year-old who has been an amazing servant, who is kind of the embodiment of the club now, which, by the way, is an amazing thing for an Asian player to be at an English club. That's an incredibly important thing that Son has kind of achieved without ever really talking about it. They've thought, well, this is the logical point, and it's not easy, but it's never going to be easy. So you have to kind of do it when it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you also the $27 million that they are rumoured to be getting in return for him. Also, you know, when you talk about the economic incentive, that's a large amount of money for a 33-year-old player leaving. And for me, you know, it is a matter of Thomas Frank coming in and wanting to build a whole new culture. He talked about that in our interview, and not having the prospect of is Sonny playing? Should he be starting? Why is Sonny on the bench? Be just a consistent flapping piece of skin almost throughout the season. He needs to control the decision making. He needs to control the team selection. He needs to control the emotional well-being of the inside the Tottenham bubble, and not be dependent upon that former hero whose future, as you say, was inevitably going to diminish. Your other point is really critical, and I do want to mention it for 1 second before we look towards the Sonny future. What a particularly emotional moment this is for the millions of passionate South Korean fans. Sonny was such a rock star in South Korea. And we posted on our Instagram, Spurs games were broadcast there with just his giant head floating above the scoreboard rather than the Tottenham crest to make sure everyone knew their prince was on the field. It's very South Korean. They do that with all their Major League Baseball stars too, and all the Korean Premier League talent that has followed Sonny. But he was the first Asian to become a genuine Premier League superstar in the social media era. I did laugh at all the tweets this weekend, Raw, showing images of thousands of happy South Korean people with the caption, the Korean nation at the news that they don't have to pretend to support Tottenham Hotspur anymore. But he was seismic, not just for Spurs, but for the Premier League in general over there.
Yeah, he was the face of the Premier League in South Korea, and to an extent in Asia more broadly. I think, obviously, I'm sure Japanese Premier League fans weren't quite as attached to Son Heung-min as Korean ones were, or Chinese fans, or Malaysian, or wherever. But I think to have one of the leading lights in the league be from Asia was really important, like commercially, which sounds like a really craven and venal way of looking at it, but also like socially, because I think for a long time there were stereotypes over Asian players, Korean and Japanese players in particular, that they were hardworking, that they were diligent, that they were good teammates, all these kind of Orientalist tropes that we tend to lean into. And Son, like you say, was a bona fide superstar. I think you can make the case he's maybe the first truly European level global superstar that South Korea or Japan have produced. There have been other players, obviously Keisuke Honda, Hidetoshi Nakata, Park Ji-sun. Like there's been plenty of players. There were a couple in Germany in the 1980s too who were major names in the Bundesliga then. But I don't think any of them have ever been as high profile and as successful as Son. Nakata was a massive star, but he never really delivered. Not truly, not in the way that Son has. And I think Son has challenged a lot of stereotypes. He's maybe changed a lot of stereotypes. You know, Newcastle, I think, have signed a Korean winger this summer. They won't be thinking, I wonder if he's going to be a diligent, hard-working man marker like Park Ji-sung was turned into by Sir Alex Ferguson. They will be thinking, I hope he's the new Son Heung-min.
To the future, Sonny, said to be in highly advanced negotiations with MLS. Expect him soon to be doing that video where he pulls on the LAFC cap in one of their signature moves. America, all I can say is brace yourself for Sonny Mania. There are 326,000 Koreans in LA. I believe, according to a quick Google, it's the largest concentration outside of Korea population-wise, which is remarkable. When I think about it, I think about this footballingly. He has a lot more to give. But I also think it culturally. That stadium, which is already delirious, LAFC's home games, it is going to be packed. It is going to be proud and delirious. It's going to be a destination for Koreans from around the world to come and, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but worship. And I can't wait to witness it. This is going to be like Park Chan-ho to the Dodgers.
Well, yeah, and even in London, where there isn't quite the size of Korean population that there is in LA, obviously, but there is one, you would see Korean fans at Spurs games, and some of those will have lived in London, and some of those will have come to London to see Son play. There were at least 2, I think, Korean journalists who were permanently stationed in London just to kind of ask Spurs managers whether Son was playing. That was their job. And it's, to be honest, quite a nice job. That's all you've got to do. Once a week, turn up at Spurs' training ground and say, Son playing? And the manager says yes or no. And there's your story. That is a great way to earn a living, Rog. He is a sensation. He will be a sensation. And it's really important that, I guess that, and I don't want to kind of get into territory that I'm not qualified to talk about, but I guess that if you think about the growth of soccer in the US, that there's always been this focus on kind of on Hispanic communities, on Latino communities, that that they are second, third, fourth, fifth generation immigrants from football cultures, and that they are the kind of bedrock of where football in the US will be. But the same is true of Korea and Japan. They're massive football cultures, and if you've got 326,001 Koreans in LA, there's a very good chance that a lot of them will think, well, the place to be is LAFC games, because we have a national hero there, someone who is to our parents, to our grandparents, to our cousins back in Korea, to our friends back in Korea. That is the guy they love. Let's go and watch him play. And that brings a whole new community into that club, and by extension into MLS and into soccer, and that's a good thing.
The tapestry of football. Wouldn't it be amazing if football historians retrospectively point to the moment that Jordan Pickford signed for Colorado Rapids in 2034, mobilising that massive Sunderland diaspora across America as the moment when football really took off in this nation. In other more present and slightly nightmare news, James Maddison suffered a, quote, according to Thomas Frank, bad injury in that friendly yesterday, recurrence of the knee injury according to reports. We wish him well, and Godspeed to Sonny and his family as they contemplate their next move, and please God arrive on our shores. I know for one I cannot wait. From Spurs, a team that wins things now, to Liverpool, a team that seems to be trying to win bloody everything. First of all, I'll say it was very moving to hear Liverpool confirm that Diogo Jota's number 20 jersey will be retired, and that the entire squad will sport a Forever 20 emblem printed on their jerseys and warm-up jackets. It will remain in place for the entire season. There's going to be quite elaborate pageantry, ritual, commemoration, a special fan mosaic, and a moment of silence planned for the first game of the Premier League season against Bournemouth. We've talked about grief and mourning a lot on this show. I have Arne Slot, as I say, coming on this week, and his thoughts on this moment will probably be the most important. But I think about all of this, and I think about the players as grieving humans themselves. I don't know how they play a focused game of football after that. The crowd, the emotion, the song, just the overwhelming sense of loss. I can't even imagine.
I think that the thing that's going to be difficult this season for everybody, for Liverpool's players, for Liverpool's fans, and for kind of the football community at large, is like reminding ourselves, remembering that grief isn't linear, that grief isn't, there's not like a way that you go through it and a series of steps that you take and then it's solved. Grief is a burden you carry with you for your entire life, and you get stronger, but it never gets any lighter. That's something someone said to me once that has really stayed with me about grief, that you are better able to carry it, but it's still there. And the way it manifests, like the way it affects you, isn't logical, and it's not rational, and it's not it doesn't separate necessarily with time. So I can understand that some of the players will feel most normal on the pitch. That is when they will feel that they are able to be themselves, not that they can forget Jota, because he was their friend, he was their teammate, and they will live with reminders of him, both ones that are present, like, when they hear his song being sung, when they look down on their jerseys and see that emblem, when they stand in a moment of silence, when in time, in months to come, they see his statue or other memorial at Anfield. They will remember him. There will be times when they are presented with something, with a thing that makes them remember him. But there will also be like the daily absences, the fact that his seat in the changing room will be empty, will be incredibly difficult for them to deal with. And it may be that initially, in the first few weeks and months of the season, maybe it will look like they've coped with it okay, that they've kind of not moved on, but they'll have Hugo Ekitike and Milos Gyökeres and Jeremy Frimpong, and Liverpool have got all these new signings, and isn't it an exciting time to be a Liverpool fan? And the players, and I'm sure we will see, they'll win a game, and it'll be, they're doing it for Jota. But it might be in 3 months, it might be in 6 months, it might be in 9 months that it hits some of them, and that they suddenly find at that point it is not possible to cope with it anymore. And it's really important that they recognise that, and that they are allowed to grieve in their own way and to mourn in their own time. It's hugely important the club gives them the support they need at the moments they need it. That's vital. But it's kind of incumbent on all of us to remember that what Liverpool have been through this summer, as a club, but particularly as a group of players, is a genuine trauma. And it's not a trauma that follows the arc of football stories. It's not a kind of, they've lost a friend and they've had to learn how to deal with it, and then they've won a game, so it's over. Like, the storyline doesn't stop there. This will be something that those players live with for the rest of their careers and the rest of their lives, because he was their friend more than anything, and they are grieving him, and they will always be grieving him. And it's up to us, I think, and this is really important to me, to remember that you have to kind of treat them as people who are going through grief, because that's what they are first and foremost. They are not footballers, and it's not just true of Liverpool. It'll be true of Ruben Neves and Pedro Neto and all of his Portuguese teammates. The ripple of Jota's death will kind of linger through the league, but at Liverpool in particular, they are grieving, and they will be grieving for months and years to come, and it's important that we remember that.
Yeah, it really puts into perspective, we use the word in football, a tragedy, a devastating loss. I mean, even that word, it just puts all of that into complete and utter perspective. And football, which so many of us go to for solace, for respite, to remove ourselves from real life, we are going to deal with a season. Liverpool fans, the Liverpool global fan base, and the players and the manager in particular, and those at Anfield, are going to be dealing with the very rare occurrence where real life, true humanity just smashes its way into football, that place which is meant to be the respite, and it's felt all the more powerfully because of that. In other lesser footballing news, Luis Diaz, since we last podcasted together, Raw, has departed for Bayern Munich. What a charismatic, no doubt a final event at Liverpool, probably in decades, he'll still be remembered as like a cult hero, a charismatic cult hero. That's the emotional side of me talking. The commercial side, though, I have got to pay respect to Liverpool Football Club. Selling a 28-year-old attacker who made it clear that he wanted to leave, which is meant to diminish their leverage. A gentleman who scored 29 goals in 103 Premier League games, and getting $80 million for him. Compared to, say, Marcus Rashford, who had a year longer on his contract. He's a year younger, more prolific goal-wise, and United have to loan him out to Barcelona because of his high wages. To me, I look at the Luis Diaz leaving almost as a token of how savvy Liverpool have been business-wise right there.
Yeah, it's one of the things that Liverpool have always been good at under Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes now. They're really good at selling players. I'd say they're much better at selling players, certainly than any of the other elite teams, and they're up there with the real masters of the art like Brighton and Brentford. They know how to get a price for their players. They know how to kind of work the market. And it's a crucial part of their strategy, because they have spent hugely this summer already. They've signed Florian Wirtz, they've signed Milos Gyökeres, they've signed Jeremy Frimpong, they've signed Hugo Ekitike, and I'm sure they will still sign more people. One of them may be Alexander Isak. But they will offset at least some of that spend by getting a really good price for the players that they no longer need or that they feel they have to move on. And Diaz, as you say, is 29 this season. To get $80 million for him is a great piece of business.
It's incredible. John Henry just constantly, no matter who his director of football is, making sure they listen to The Gambler by Kenny Loggins. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. And God, Liverpool fold them in the greatest, most lucrative fashion. In other Liverpool news, probably the big news of the week, Hugo Ekitike has picked the number 22 to go with his palindromic name, so that his jersey reads backwards the same as it does frontwards. GFOP at Salty Duden insted us and said Ekitike's worn 11, 33 and 44 throughout his career. He's now 22. Bro out there to conquer all the palindromes. Raw, as a wordsmith, care to comment?
I had not realised that, but that does make it sound a lot like he's doing it on purpose, which is quite funny.
It's amazing. I mean, that's my thing. The palindrome. I love goals and palindromes. Those are the two things that drive Hugo Ekitike through. I've got huge respect, by the way, for that. I've got even bigger respect for the statisticians who are instantly able to pull out things like Hugo Ekitike is set to be the 5th player with a palindrome surname to play for Liverpool Football Club. I don't know if you can name any of these, Ro. I found this very... my brain doesn't work like this, let's be candid. I'll give you Shea Ojo.
Ojo, okay, yeah, fine. I mean, that's, it's just 3 letters. Does that
I'll give you Ozan Kabak.
Kabak, okay.
Yeah, and then the other two, Andrew Hanna and David Hanna. I mean, they're kind of phoning it in, aren't they?
Oh, come on.
But I did read this, and my instant reaction, which tells you about my mental state after the very long summer for the US in the Gold Cup. I was like, my God, the American national team needs to get more palindrome name players for us before we finally become a world-class team. Quick stop at Newcastle for some Liverpool-related news. Alexander Isak remains Liverpool's dream target. We talked last show about why Newcastle are struggling to sign and retain players. Fabrizio Romano came on our show for a quite lightningly electric appearance last week. It was really magnificent to talk to him. He made a great point on why Newcastle can't retain players. He said one of Newcastle's problems is that they've got a reputation within football agency culture for, quote, not letting players go. So good young talent just does not want to go there and risk being stuck. I guess the implication is they need to be smarter about how they treat players if they want to continue their upward trajectory.
Yeah, it's a really important aspect of trying to build your club into something, is that you have to understand that as you grow, until you're at the top of the food chain, whoever's above you will want to take your players. That's how it works. And there was a really interesting line, I think, in a piece that was on The Athletic about Newcastle's kind of understanding of the Isak situation. And there's lots of claim and counterclaim, and no one's entirely sure who's to blame and who's not to blame, and who knew what and when and all that stuff. But there was a really interesting line that said that Newcastle have always accepted that as part of their growth, players would have to be sold. They just never wanted it to be Isak. And you think, well, hang on, so you realise you'd have to sell players but didn't think you'd have to sell the best one? Like, that's how it works. Like, why would anyone look at your team and be like, we want your 4th best player? The teams above you will want your best player, and then they'll want your next best player. That's how it works. And I wrote a piece about this for The Observer and got the immediate response, and it's totally predictable. Like, you're a Liverpool fan, you're writing this because you want it to happen. But I think there is a really strong argument that Newcastle should be looking at leeching as much money off Liverpool as is humanly possible for Alexander Isak, and then saying, thank you very much, because this is not only our chance to be totally PSR compliant for X number of years, but we can now build a team. We can get the depth in our squad that means we can cope in the Champions League and the Premier League. We can replace Isak with 3 or 4 players.
It is the Liverpool fan in you talking, but it's a Liverpool fan who saw this modern period of success traced to the Coutinho sale.
And they've only just finished spending that money.
God God bless. It's not all blame. By the way, I love your idea. You can take any player, just not our best one, like Everton saying. You can take any player, just not Beto. But not all bleak for Newcastle fans. In comes young up-and-comer Aaron Ramsdale, a gent who's honestly like signing an albatross while smashing mirrors on Friday the 13th. God bless. Tuna down. But Liverpool are continuing, as you described, their avid coveting, let's say for now, of goal machine, back-pointing celebrator Alexander Isak. There's a large belief they need to hand over a larger boat of money than they'd imagine. But to the rescue, it means offloading Darwin Núñez. Raw. In swoop, we heard this weekend, Al Hilal, who are said to be willing to send over a ton of cash for the Uruguayan striker. Quickly, Raw, is this where we are in football? The Saudi nation-state's public investment fund, the PIF essentially, buying a player for Al Hilal so that a team trying to buy a massive star from another PIF-owned asset, Newcastle, can get very liquid. Is this just really modern football?
The whole situation is really weird, and there's lots of weirdnesses about it. But I think it's best summed up by this one, Rog, is that Saudi Arabia is in the middle of this process of building the Saudi Pro League into something. So that, they want to be one of the top 5 or 6 leagues in the world. Fine, not a problem. They spent all this money on big players. They're trying to build these teams up. Al Hilal did really well at the Club World Cup. We just saw that. And yet they seem to have decided that the one player they really simply must have is Darwin Núñez. That bit really baffles me, to be honest. And I quite like Núñez as a player. I think he's fine. He's not been a disaster at Liverpool. He's been fine. He's just maybe not been worth the money. And obviously now that they think they can get a much better striker in Alexander Isak, they want to sell him. It is weird that Al Hilal have decided so avidly they have to have Darwin Núñez. It's weird that the whole thing is caught effectively in a house buying chain, because Liverpool can't buy Isak until they've sold Núñez, but also until Newcastle have signed either Sesko or Yohan Wissa, or maybe both. And Brentford won't sell Wissa until they've found a replacement. So the British record transfer that Liverpool want to do with Alexander Isak now effectively rests on Brentford signing a striker from Portugal or Denmark or somewhere. That's weird. And it's beyond weird, as you say.
Hands off Beto, you cowards.
But it's also really weird that ultimately the money that goes back to Newcastle, at least part of it, like a decent chunk of it, will come from PIF, from Newcastle's owners. Now, whether that is a sign that the public investment fund aren't that bothered about Newcastle anymore, I don't know. Whether it's a sign that they're trying to get the liquid money into Newcastle, again, not sure. But it very much feels like it's not ideal that the money is basically being routed through Liverpool back to Newcastle, either for the good or the bad of Newcastle. I'm not entirely sure which.
God bless it. The only thing I can think about Saudi Arabia and their Darwin Núñez fascination is that they've realised, and they really have, football ultimately is won by memes, and he is one of the ultimate incredible meme footballers. Talking about new strikers, it is incredible to revel in Arsenal Football Club happiness. We are deep into our Gyökeres era. The arrival of Victor Gyökeres finally scratches almost the death itch for a number 9, which has rumbled on for several second-place seasons now. Remember, Gent thrashed and banged a staggering 97 goals in 102 games for Sporting in Portugal. Yes, there's a slight nagging memory of the 27-year-old struggling in the English top flight with Brighton when he was on their books. But I got to say, I do love how quickly we moved on from the "he is great, he's going to solve all of our problems" to "what the hell." After he made his debut in a North London friendly, I have to be candid, friendly, they mean nothing. He was introduced in the 77th minute, I think, in Hong Kong. People are already freaking the F out that he only had 2 touches after that. It honestly all reminds me, Raw, this moment of how we were so quick to write off Erling Haaland after the Community Shield, where he made his debut against Darwin Núñez and just failed to take any of the chances. We all immediately decided he was a total bust. I think he then proceeded to blast, was it 10 goals in 6 games? But really, it's a symbol of the intense pressure that he is now under to produce almost instantly.
Well, yeah, and the big thing with Gyökeres has been that, Arteta has been told for, 4 years he desperately needs a number 9. And he's always kind of resisted it because he knew that the risk of signing a proper, an out-and-out 9 is that they don't touch the ball a lot, that they're not involved in build-up play, and he wants his players to be involved in build-up play. I think they have deliberately gone for a striker they can sometimes leave out, who does not have to play every single game, as opposed to trying to sign Alexander Isak, around whom you have to build your team. He should, in time, give Arsenal that option of having a really ruthless finisher, which maybe they need, against a low-blocked team at home when they're really struggling to kind of put away all of those chances. But at the same time, it will take time for him to get used to the team, to understand the way that Arsenal work, to find his place within Arteta's system. Maybe 13 minutes in a friendly against Tottenham isn't the best way to judge him. Roger, maybe that's just me being a bit too soft, I don't know. Feels a bit quick.
Yeah, don't take away our ability to freak the F out. It's why we watch. And talking of Erling Haaland, Manchester City, fascinating to read Pep Guardiola's interview with GQ, which came out last week, which has triggered just a slew of headlines. Not like the tabloids to take something he said to an extreme, but the consensus is Pep is contemplating a 15-year break from the game. He actually said, I don't know how long I'll stop for after the Manchester City job. A year, 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10, 15, I don't know. But I will leave after this spell with City because I need to stop and focus on myself and on my body. Gent is both A, shattered, B, making no secret of his exhaustion. Honestly, shades of Jurgen Klopp saying he was so tired. Pep last season, remember, seemed absolutely knackered, burnt out to his core, scraping his face in agony in game after game. We've talked about this. Elite football management is soul-grinding business. But we also know the modern game does not relent, and it really doesn't allow for decades-long dominance mentally, tactically at the top of the game. What are we witnessing exactly here in this moment with Pep Guardiola as he girds his loins to start what is a massive rebuild, Roar? Do we not know until it happens, and then we kind of retrofit our analysis?
Yeah, that tends to be the way it works, doesn't it? There's part of me that thinks this is Pep's last season. There's part of me that thinks the reason he signed that contract extension last year was to effectively allow him the same thing Klopp had, which is to resign, to retire, whatever it might be, without having that endless drumbeat of will he, won't he in the months leading up to it. That he can just say, look, I've signed this contract, I'm here for another 2 years. There is part of me that thinks he leaves City at the end of this coming season. As you say, he's tired. He said he's tired. He looks tired. He's now talking about needing a break. If you're a player, that doesn't necessarily feel like the right kind of vibe going into the season. You're the man who's meant to lead you, being like, do you know what, guys? I am knackered. I'm not sure I've got this in me anymore. I need a 15-year break or a 10-year break, whatever it might be. I don't know if he will manage a club again. That's always looked a little bit it's always looked a bit like City might be his last club job. There might be a national team in it somewhere for him. Maybe England, maybe Brazil, probably not Spain. But I think he knows he needs a break. He looks like he needs a break. And maybe the USA. But the question really has to be, does he have the energy to start this rebuild this season? That is the pressing issue with City. Can Guardiola find it within himself to build up that head of steam that City need to kind of restore that aura? If they win their first 8-10 games, then it will all be about Guardiola's rebirth, his final last great act as a manager. If there are a couple of missteps, then you wonder whether maybe he doesn't get to have the goodbye that he wants and deserves at City.
Oh, I said the USA needs more palindromes in our footballing infrastructure. Pep it's a palindrome. I'm going to speak that into existence. From City to Manchester United. I watched them yesterday battle Everton to a really stop-start 2-2 draw at the Bends in Atlanta. Some fine flourishes, has to be said, from Brian Mbeumo on his debut. His understanding already with Cunha and Bruno. It's going to unlock, let me just say, a lot of Premier League backlines this year. Lovely cameo too from Mason Mount, who's looked lively. A fine dagger of a goal from him. Midfield looks a little short, a little slow, a little mono pace. Goalkeeper situation is continuing to create anxious questions around the club. But all the reports coming out of the travelling media are so bloody upbeat. Culture change. A lot of talk about that. This was the team who were the worst Premier League manifestation of Manchester United last season, that led to Ruben Amorim apologising to the fans and then offering to resign. James Ducker wrote in the Telegraph, "I am on Manchester United's tour and the culture's changing." Raw, yes, they beat Bournemouth and West Ham and drew to Everton, but pre-season, I mean, we can't really declare sea change off pre-season. Is it just that he left Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony, Jadon Sancho, Malacia as a bomb squad training in Manchester during this tour, so he's firmly in control? Is it wishful thinking? I do think a lot of people in the media would love a Premier League where Manchester United back is back. We're just not going to know again until they play Arsenal on that first day of the season, are we?
Well, no, we may not even know by then, to be honest. And also, I think we have to define, like, what do we mean by back? Because has Amorim's kind of quite drastic sort of action on the squad, as you say, leaving 5 players behind, making it clear that, you know, several quite big stars aren't really wanted anymore, has that maybe increased the level of discipline in the squad? Has it asserted his authority? Yeah, I can believe that. That makes sense. Have the signings of Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo improved the squad? Yes, Mbeumo in particular. Are they going to turn Manchester United into a team capable of getting into the Champions League? Probably not. Not from like 15th in the Premier League. Are they going to turn Manchester United into prospective champions? No, definitely not. So, like, are Manchester United back in the sense that they might not be a joke this season? Yes, maybe. Could be, possibly, I don't know. Are they back in terms of where they think Manchester United should be? No, obviously not. That will take ages. I think it's been a slow summer for United, and that's not what they needed at all. And even though I love Mbeumo as a player, I think he's a great signing. Cunha, I'm a little bit less sure of. I don't think they turn this into a fully functioning Ruben Amorim team, and that's what they went through all of that pain last season to do, that they knew they had to get a team that could play 3-4-2-1 and literally no other formation, Rog, because there are no other formations, that's the best one. And they've signed 2 players who kind of fit in, but not really. And now they're meant to have turned the corner completely. I think it is, like you say, I think it's wishful thinking. I think the fans and around, you know, a variety of, obviously the fans and the executives will clearly want them to be back to where they were. But there is a media presence that wants to believe that Manchester United are coming again because it would be a great story.
Yes.
But I don't think there's any real evidence for it.
Be the ultimate story. We're no longer a meme club. That's worth the trophy. Very quickly, bringing up the rear in the show and in live, Everton Football Club. We were told the new stadium was going to change everything. The headline's not so thrilling right now today. Everton in danger of false start in new home. Which is a bit of a downer. Not going to lie, last Friday on stage was magical. I've talked about it up top with Tark and Seamus and Ndai and Moisey. It was a night of nights, but I couldn't sleep. I've not talked about this all night afterwards. I just my eyeballs were just like seared by the image, the experience of David Moyes staring into my soul and demanding 9 or 10 new players before the season starts. Yesterday, he said, I think there'll be deals next week. I think we're getting closer, but I felt that 4 or 5 weeks ago. Obviously, we're getting near, this is a real quote, we're getting near the tickly bits. And we've got to get some things done. Raw, I don't think Moyes is like a tickly bits kind of guy, and I assume that's a euphemism for a quick, swift punch in the down belows or a Glasgow kiss. Is this a moment of panic, or is this just modern football where there's now 9 Premier League teams in Europe next season? If you add the 3 newly promoted teams, Everton is just one of the other 8 and are kind of condemned to pick up the scraps, the flotsam, the jetsam, the sloppy seconds, talent-wise.
Yeah, and if you look across the Premier League, there's quite a lot of teams who are in that same position, and ones who are higher up the food chain than Everton. So Newcastle have struggled to get deals done this season, and so have Aston Villa, who are, they're 2 of the great kind of upwardly mobile sides. They're both blaming PSR, which works in both Newcastle and Villa's case by completely disregarding all of the money you have spent in previous windows and pretending it didn't happen, and just assuming you should be able to spend as much as you like all of the time. I think that there are a cast of clubs who will have to wait until later in August to get their deals done, and that is, from Everton's point of view, not ideal. The one thing that I would say, I don't want to criticise Grandpa David, but the one thing that kind of worries me a little bit is that Moyes did previously have a reputation for being a little bit indecisive on players, for being a little bit too careful with money. And you wonder whether Everton can't really afford that anymore. I don't think
having said
can
that,
anymore.
I think about it, we just, and part of the stuff is not really we discussed, we've got an entire new front office. Angus Kinnear, CEO from Leeds, Nick Cox leaving Manchester United to become our technical director, James Smith coming in from Manchester City to be the new head of recruitment. All of these moves have just been made. It's going to take a moment to click. That's what I fear. It's just like new guys trying to set up their system. Well, the deals need to be done now. I have no doubt it will be worked out in time. I just hope we can get our crap together in that time, because those arrivals, that front office does symbolise a club with aspiration. One other quick bit of news. Welcome back to America, Matt Turner. New England Revolution have brought the US goalkeeper back from Lyon on loan, I believe, with an option to buy. I love Matt Turner. I've never hidden this. He's one of the most, he's just one of the warmest, loveliest human beings I've met in football. I find his rise inspirational. He's written off every single level of the way. On his way up from college to MLS, no one gave him a chance. He fought his way in. He then went to Arsenal, the club he supported as a kid. It was magical. It did not work out for him there. Did not work out for him at Nottingham Forest, where really he lost his confidence and the playing time. I just say may he reclaim the playing time and all that's great, because he can still be a leader on this US team that cries out for leadership. And now he's got the plus of having his young kids get real Bostonian accents. Godspeed to you. But Raw, let's finish this up with a letter from a GFOP of one, the Ned Fisher from Charlottesville, Virginia. Ned, email us. We'll send you a coveted MIB patch. I do love this question. Let's dive on in. Raw, do the honours.
Greetings, my name is Ned Fisher, long-time listener, huge fan of the show, but a first-time writer or caller. I'm a middle school history teacher from Charlottesville, Virginia, who is currently staying at Exeter College in Oxford, that's a confusing college name, for a summer writing course. That sounds idyllic. I feel very fortunate to be learning here with such a diverse, multicultural group of students. I'm also fortunate because I will be here next week for the opening of the EFL season and have booked myself a ticket to watch Oxford United play Portsmouth at Disney FC. I am writing to ask for any advice or recommendations for an American attending his first club match in the UK. I'm a neutral in this match, but plan to go all in for the day on Oxford and buy the shirt, an Oxford shirt. Is there anything you'd advise about the matchday experience I should know to maximise the memories? Anything you might share would be happily welcome. Thank you so much for all you do. You guys got me through COVID and beyond. Best, Ned Fisher. I'm presuming that we got him through COVID, like spiritually rather than medically. I'm not sure either of us are qualified to do that, Rog.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on podcast TV. I'm so happy for Ned in this moment. First ever game after all this time. It is ecstatic. God bless Raw. You're more the Oxbridge type than I am, so I'm going to let you take the reins here, baby, about how Ned can make great memories. I think
the only thing I'd really say is sit among the hardcore of the fans. I think that's the really important thing to do. Like, go and sit in an end. Sit in whichever end at the Tottenham Stadium, I think it's still called, that the Oxford fans are gathered. Be as close to that part of the stadium as possible. That is how you'll get the most like immersive experience. Absorb everything. Be around the stadium a couple of hours before the game. Watch the crowd build up. There's no tailgating culture in England, but people will start to come through the streets around the stadium within a couple of hours beforehand. Try and walk if you can. The Tottenham is out of Oxford city centre, but it will be possible to get that either by public transport or just by walking. Make it a day and an experience, and then be as close to the heart of the action in the stands as you can be. And I think that's how you get the most out of it.
I've been to a game at Oxford. I think I went for a pint at a place. Was it the George Inn? Go and get a pie before. I love Rory's advice for any game. Get there so early that you can be there and just see the day kind of form and create around you. It's really, I find it so deeply, profoundly energizing. I find it very moving that you're about to so consciously get the first game. I do remember the days when I used to take my family to. I mean, this is not so long ago. This is how football's changed. I used to say to them in the car, right, this is the last time you should open your mouth. Like any American at a game would get their head kicked or was at risk of getting their head kicked in. Now it's so common, you kind of welcome. The Rory's advice, sit amongst the hardcore, is hilarious. 10 years ago, I'd be panicked that you'd stand up in the middle of the hardcore and just start chanting, fight! or die. Just like get a bit too into it, but just enjoy it. It's just a joyous experience. Oxford is I empathise with Oxford. I think that Gary Rowett is their manager. Not so long ago, a man with huge aspirations. Now he's playing at a club where I think one of the chants is something like, we're on the march with Rowett's army. We're staying in this effing league, which I just love. Like that is the hope. Yeah, but the use of the word effing means that you're actually overcompensating. You have some doubt about whether that's going to happen. Just both a sign of optimism and fear of the worst, which is an Evertonian I really admire. So I love it. Ned, send us photos most of all. I love your letter. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your entire trip to England. Send us so many images. That is it. We are headed to London ourselves at MIB to shoot our Premier League holiday. We are going over. We're going to shoot our interviews, the pre-season interviews with the likes of Pep, Mikel Arteta, Virgil van Dijk. We're going to be going up and down again, the length and breadth in a really compact time of England. Raw, when I next see you, it will be in person in London. We tape in our season previews in person.
We are. I was just thinking, Roger, if you're on up and down England, do you want to borrow my camper van?
I was going to say we should tape in the camper van in London.
Let's just tape in the van
in South London.
I'm not parking the van in London. It'd be a nightmare.
I'd love it. Oh, God, I'll prize your hubcaps off myself. Raw, enjoy the rest of your holiday, you beautiful man. I'm going to live vicariously through you, you Crown Prince of Harrogate turned Baron of the Loire Valley.
Baron d'Amboise. I'm going to go, and it's very hot here, Roger. Now I'm been sat in the van now for a while, and we've for the lighting for the video, I had to kind of lift all the shutters up and stuff. I'm now really hot. I'm going to go and jump in a pool. That's my plan.
For a video, because of how great the image is. For it. The video is going to take in about 800 views, but this is Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted, and courage.